Hello, this is NCC-171D for Vulcan, and it was announced earlier this week that there might be a possible ninth planet that's orbiting our sun farther out than any of the other current known planets and Pluto, which of course is a dwarf planet. So I'm going to be talking about that. The indication that there's a ninth planet comes from the fact that the objects in the Kuiper belt, which are the asteroid belt that's farther out from our outer planets and that Pluto's a part of, have several objects that orbit in these strange, eccentric, elliptical orbits. And a lot of them, some of which are mapped down here, have these orbits that come very close to the sun around this area, and then sort of move outwards and reach their, I can't remember if it's like apoapsis or periapsis, but they're farther away point in this sort of direction, and then are close to the sun here. And so, this, for whatever reason, I don't know the actual logic behind it, is very unusual and improbable. So, people thought that there might be some particular reason or some anomaly that caused this. And so they used mathematical modeling to test, obviously they can't actually go out and make their own solar system, so they have a mathematical model that tests what would happen in certain situations that they thought might cause this. So I'm not certain, but I think they tested different distributions of the mass in the Kuiper belt and some other things. And then one of the things they tested, which was the idea of having a ninth planet that was farther out than all the other planets in Pluto that might be able to cause this. And in the mathematical modeling, this made the most sense and most greatly indicated that something like this could occur. So, this isn't the first time that we've discovered a planet, or think we've discovered a planet in this way. The first example of which was the discovery of Neptune. So, the way Neptune was discovered was that relatively, I don't know exactly how immediately, but after this discovery of Uranus, which was discovered, I think almost by accident with the telescope, scientists, when they used Newton's laws to look at Uranus's orbit, saw that Uranus didn't orbit in quite the same way as predicted by Newton's laws. And so, at the time, Newton's laws had held up so far and all the things we'd seen. So they thought maybe another planet might be farther out that could be pulling on the planet, and that could have the effect that they saw on Uranus's orbit. So what they did is, using the information, I think they calculated the orbit of Neptune, and using that, they then looked for Neptune using a telescope, and then found it there. So, another time that we tried to use this we have used this idea about predicting planets to describe anomalies in gravity and where objects are moving, is in the case of Mercury, which is the planet closest to the Sun, and another planet that doesn't actually exist, but that that would have been called Vulcan. Not like this Vulcan from Star Trek, but a theoretical planet that they used to describe something that occurred with Mercury. So what happened in the case of Mercury is that, similarly to Uranus, when they looked at Mercury's real orbit and compared it to what was predicted by Newton's laws, they found that it varied in that Mercury's orbit precessed a bit. I'm not sure if it either wasn't supposed to at all, or it just did more so than was predicted, but the point is that Mercury's orbit precessed. Mercury has a elliptical orbit, but it doesn't just an elliptical orbit. The elliptical orbit itself sort of rotates, as you can see here, and that's what precessing is. So at the time, beforehand, I think it was actually the same person who made this observation, so I thought, oh, this is probably just like with Uranus, there's probably another planet out there that's causing this. And so they trumped up this theoretical planet, which would be, I believe, closer to the Sun, and said it would be Vulcan. So then, like with Neptune, they went looking for it with telescopes, but they couldn't find it. And so they sort of said, they had no other explanation for this at the point, so they said maybe it's the sun's glare, or maybe we just can't see it for some reason, sort of said it's probably there, and we just can't find it. Until later, this guy that I'm sure none of you have ever heard of came along and proposed this thing called relativity, which relates gravity and other things to, that affect space and time. So under relativity, which was predicted, or which was described by Albert Einstein, objects with great mass, like the sun, should warp space-time. And when this was accounted for in calculating Mercury's orbit, the sun's warping of space-time explained why Mercury perforated. So, with that explanation, the planet that they think that has been shown to probably be there is thought to have a mass that's about 10 times that of Earth's. It's thought to be somewhat larger than Neptune. Sorry, not larger, somewhat smaller than Neptune. So here's an illustration of it. So it would be larger than Earth, but then not a bit smaller, but not like vastly smaller than Neptune. Then, because it's so far out from Pluto and all our other planets, and it has a fairly decent mass, it's thought that it would take from 10,000 to 20,000 years for one complete orbit about the Sun. It's thought that its orbit, on average, is about 20 times farther from the average distance of Neptune. And the reason I emphasized on average there is I think I heard in, I can't remember if it was an article or a video, that at one point it's like 5 times the distance away that Pluto is, and at another point it's like, this might be wrong, but I think 25, but the point is it's very eccentric. So at one point it's very far away, it's very far away the entire time, but it gets vastly farther away at its farthest point than at its nearest point. And then, so that's the new planet. Just as a reminder, we haven't seen this yet, so we're not entirely certain that it's here. But, so now that this evidence is being published, it's likely that various telescopes across the world will probably be being used to see if we can find this or see it, which might be hard because it's so far out that it could be dim or something. But just another reminder that it's a telescope. This picture, which everyone keeps using, is like an artist's interpretation. While I think I've heard that while it's probably supposed to be a gas giant, other than that, we don't know exactly what it looks like. So here's some links to some of the articles I used. I used more than this, and I watched some videos on it too to get the information for this. So this isn't conclusive, but this is just some other information about it. This is NCC 101D, Freddie Vulcan saying live long and prosper.